psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of United States society. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans.
The people who aided and abetted Trump are stupid because they believed his big lie. The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind.
Thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it. The next stage is destabilization. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. The next stage, of course, is crisis, and after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis.
Breaking news tonight, the coronavirus forcing millions more Americans into virtual lockdown. Over 75 million people in New York, California, Illinois, and Connecticut ordered to stay at home. The U.S. borders to Mexico and Canada set to close to non-essential travel. A spring break crackdown. Florida communities closing beaches. In Europe, the crisis growing inside the ICU in Italy, the country's deadliest day.
Promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C.
Time to remember that we, the people, are the government. You and I. Not some force in a distant capital. Not some powerful force that we have no control over. It's us.
With benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not.
You are a self-proclaimed socialist.
Democratic, put in there, please.
Thank you. Your agenda has promised free health care for everybody, free college tuition, and to pay off people's college loans. The price tag for that is estimated to be $60 trillion over 10 years.
Never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in a state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking, that every second the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocies. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system.
To a new day, I communicate ... did it ... dash.
Hold up, wait a minute.
Hidden in plain sight.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. What's in your community, locally and globally? I'm Vessel 1 and with me Vessel 2.
Hey, quick question.
Is it hidden in plain sight?
Vessel 1, Vessel 2.
Talks about hidden in plain sight.
And with that, let's get into it.
Hold it now, wait. Ladies and gentlemen. Brothers and sisters. Do you know what time it is? What time is it?
It's been a long time. I was giving you time to get the last one straight.
Hidden in plain.
That was Yuri Bezmenov. He died in Canada. He actually defected to Canada. He didn't even stay in America, and he defected sometime in the 70s. And again, a lot of the idealism of what he was saying was coming out of Marxism, and that's Karl Marx, spelled like the Marx Brothers, M-A-R-X. And if you don't know, Karl Marx, he was born in Germany, but get this, if you don't know, he was born as a small hat, Old Testament. He was Jewish. Anything you would like to add in to the subject matter, Vessel 2?
Yeah, you already broke down the state which we are in as of today. And Karl Marx is a champion to the Europeans. So I had a conversation not too long ago with a fellow American, and I posed him this thought. I asked him, when reading through all of our history books, American history, we learned about primarily the European cultures. Right. And we learned about our government structure and the different concepts of government structures: capitalism, socialism, totalitarianism, communism. And I asked him, why is it that we go through the school system and we're taught all of these different government structures, and then once you figure out what structure that you feel will work, or you feel that works in your best interest, the people who don't agree with you, they end up calling you a Marxist.
Right.
And as a non-European person, I said to him, I said, so basically we go through a European-centric school, we learn all of the European-centric ways, and then the biggest throwback you can throw at me is I've adapted a European small hat way of thinking.
Mm.
And I'm the bad one because of my thinking, but I didn't create none of this.
Right.
He just looked at me, like a deer in the headlights. And I think that's what America's going through now. America has created so much good and bad in the world, but it doesn't want to answer to or for the bad parts. It only wants to glamorize the good parts, but all of the glamorization is you're promoting everything bad.
That's it.
Yeah, it is hard for America to wake up because the people who are supposedly in control or in the leadership positions, they don't have any positive philosophy to follow if it's a European centric philosophy. My opinion. I could be wrong. And I'm not saying it's just the Europeans who think uh, in that manner. Everybody's culture is different, but this is just how we as Americans, we were taught, trained, and the subject matters we were forced to learn.
Totally agree. I concur 110% of what you just said.
So if
And
America doesn't
just
wake up, if it doesn't wake up, then I mean, it is what it is. It's nothing that anybody outside of the Europeans have control over.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. You know, and if that's all you know and that's how you've been taught, so I mean, how can you combat that situation? You know, where is the release or the outlet of it all?
Right.
Yeah.
For anyone who is still wondering, the Mueller report makes it clear that Russian operatives played a role in the American elections of 2016 that resulted in the presidency of Donald Trump. The true impact of that role is certainly open to debate. Since then, Trump has on occasion been quite nice to the Russian President Putin, occasionally seen as capitulating on important matters. Whether you believe Putin really has some kind of compromising material to make Trump do his bidding, or if Trump is simply being nice to people who partially helped get him elected, or if you somehow believe, despite ample evidence to the contrary, that all this is much ado about nothing, the fact is President Putin is a very experienced former KGB officer. He has both the know-how and the intelligence to carry out very far-sighted and ingenious operations. We don't know his endgame, and neither do we know how much of his KGB training he still employs, but in light of current events, there may be a way for us to get a deeper understanding by studying the words of Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov, a former KGB agent who defected to Canada in 1970. In 1984, Bezmenov gave an interview to G. Edward Griffin from which much can be learned today. His most chilling point was that there's a long-term plan put in play by Russia to defeat America through psychological warfare and demoralization. It's a long game that takes decades to achieve, but it may already be bearing fruit. Bezmenov made the point that the work of the KGB mainly does not involve espionage, despite what our popular culture may tell us. Most of the work, 85% of it, was a slow process which we call either ideological subversion, active measures, or psychological warfare. What does that mean? Bezmenov explained that the most striking thing about ideological subversion is that it happens in the open as a legitimate process. You can see it with your own eyes, he said. The American media would be able to see it if it just focused on it. Hey, race how he further defined ideological subversion. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. Bezmenov described this process as a great brainwashing which has 4 basic stages. The first stage is called demoralization, which takes from 15 to 20 years to achieve. According to the former KGB agent, that is the minimum number of years it takes to re-education generation of students that is normally exposed to the ideology of its country. In other words, the time it takes to change what the people are thinking. He used the examples of 1960s hippies coming to positions of power in the 80s in the government and businesses of America. Bezmenov claimed this generation was already contaminated by Marxist-Leninist values. Of course, this claim that many baby boomers are somehow espousing KGB-tainted ideas is hard to believe, but Bezmenov's larger point addressed why people who have been gradually demoralized are unable to understand that this has happened to them. Referring to such people, Bezmenov said, they are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern, alluding to Pavlov. You cannot change their mind even if you expose them to authentic information. Even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. Demoralization is a process that is irreversible. Bezmenov actually thought, back in 1984, that the process of demoralizing America was already completed. It would take another generation and another couple of decades to get the people to think differently and return to their patriotic American values, claimed the agent. Vladimir Putin in a KGB uniform around 1980. In what is perhaps a most striking passage in the interview, he rates how Bezmenov described the state of a demoralized person. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore, said Bezmenov. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him a concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he receives a kick in his fan bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand. But not before that. That's the tragedy of the situation of demoralization. It's hard not to see in that the state of many modern Americans. We have become a society of polarized tribes, with some people flat out rejecting facts in favor of narratives and opinions. Once demoralization is completed, the second stage of ideological brainwashing is destabilization. During this 2 to 5 year period, asserted Bezmenov, what matters is the targeting of essential structural elements of a nation: economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. Basically, the subverter, Russia, would look to destabilize every one of those areas in the United States, considerably weakening it. The third stage would be crisis. It would take only up to 6 weeks to send a country into crisis, explained Bezmenov. The crisis would bring a violent change of power, structure, and economy and will be followed by the last stage, normalization. That's when your country is basically taken over, living under a new ideology and reality. This will happen to America unless it gets rid of people who will bring it to a crisis, warned Bezmenov. What's more, if people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help the United States, adding, you may kiss goodbye to your freedom. It bears saying that when he made this statement, he was warning about baby boomers and Democrats of the time. In another, somewhat terrifying excerpt, he raised what Bezmenov had to say about what is really happening in the United States. It may think it is living in peace, but it has been actively at war with Russia. And for some time. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at the peacetime, said the former KGB agent. False. United States is in a state of war. Undeclared, total war against the basic principles and foundations of this system. Whether you think that is true may depend on your politics, but the reality of Russian active measures, as has been outlined in the recent indictments by the special counselor Robert Mueller, give Bezmenov's words new urgency.
There you have it. Another source confirming Bezmenov, his thinking in an interview was very clear and to the point. What say you, so too?
Yeah, that was more detailed than the video, but it's the same outcome. I mean, if you look at what's going on now between Russia and NATO, and our so-called president just went over to Kiev. So I think Russia, Putin, he's turning this into more or less a spiritual battle. And his remarks are it sounds like he's trying to do good as far as morally, trying to run his country with the heavy fist morally. And America is the total opposite of that. So if we have to go through World War III, it is going to be once again at the hands of the Europeans. And
Yeah.
China is involved solely because if Russia falls, then China is the last standing leg over in this area where NATO is going to be at China's borders.
Right, right. Yeah, there you have it. Everything is confirmed, and it's, yeah, as you can see, it's coming to pass. So, I mean, obviously, we are in a war, a mental, spiritual, economic, and moral dynamic war. Before, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to detour and I'm going to play these two audio clips, one from the Jeff Rentz project, and also a clip from audio clip from Dr. X, and they're about 5 minutes long. And what it is another connection, or as you would like to say, somewhat of a connection or transition to confirm and give value to what is actually happening. And Jeff Rentz is, I believe, a right-wing liberal, and he of course, he has his certain views and viewpoint, but just like Dr. X, they both are pointing out the demoralization of this society. And this is Jeff Rentz, right?
The bird flu pandemic that's coming. Talking about, again, Marburg that may be coming. It's constant fear and fright night. They never stop. They don't vary the menu very often. And the results, 30% of high school girls so stressed, so beaten down, so much PTSD, they seriously considered, and that's a quote, suicide last year. What a sad, terrible commentary on what's left of this culture. It's going down, Frosty. It's going down.
And it's very painful to watch it. You know, I've been watching the American scene as a journalist, certainly as an educator, for the last 50 years. And honest to gosh, I too I can't quite wrap my hands around the fact that it is appalling, because what's going on is self-generated by a mindset known as the liberal mindset or the progressive mindset.
I mean Bolshevik, communist, Marxism, Zionism, that mindset? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of mindset we're talking about.
Got it.
It never has worked anywhere in the world except out of the barrel of a gun.
Multiculturalism and socialist communism do not work.
That's exactly correct. They do not work. And so this extraordinary governance and those extraordinary men and women back there in 1776, right there, and they finished the Constitution, I think, 1789, that we've so successfully enjoyed, and again, you see all of this, whether it's a Joy Reid or a Joy Behar, or you get somebody like a Don Lemon. These people are media terrorists.
Dirt. They are.
They're dirt bags on the air is what they are. And they are dangerous because they're stirring up the emotions of the past, when the past is 150 years ago, and trying to make them real in today's world when they aren't. And I can state this emphatically, having been a world traveler all my life. Every person living in the United States of America, black, white, brown, yellow, pink, I don't care who or what they are. If they are living in America, they are living the highest standard of living in the world. They are enjoying the highest educational.
Well, the opportunities here have never been equaled by any other civilization or society that I know of, and your point is well taken. Now, it has degraded dramatically in the last 2-3 years by design. They pulled the trigger, and it all began to fall apart, and it is cascading out of control now. That's my take.
A red line. Russia has already decided that war with NATO is inevitable, and they are preparing for it. My Russian journalist contacted Moscow. Give me the list of nations that will be nuked. Every nation in Europe is a designated enemy and will be attacked, including the little nations like Andorra, Monaco, San Marino, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg. Long-standing neutral nations like Sweden and Switzerland will not be spared. Hungary and Croatia will not be spared. The only nations in Europe that are not enemies are Turkey, Kosovo, Bosnia, and Serbia. Serbia, however, will be at war with Bosnia and Kosovo. Turkey will be at war with Greece and Israel and Cyprus. Iran will go to war with Israel, Ukraine, and Azerbaijan. Russia has decided that the Anglo-Saxon hatred for Russia will never go away. They need those nations to be completely destroyed as possible. This is why a Poseidon torpedo will be used against the British Isles, but not mainland Europe. They want to destroy America, Canada, and New Zealand too, as well as Australia. What surprised me at first was some of the targets I did not think of. The Bahamas have to go because the U.S. Navy has assets there, and the Bahamas are listed as an enemy, an unfriendly nation. The Turks and Caicos, the Cayman Islands, along with the Channel Islands, are a target because they are banking centers. Major military bases in the Indian Ocean, specifically Diego Garcia, will be nuked because it is a strategic bomber base, as will Bermuda, which is used by both U.S. and British navies, as well as the island of Ascension in the South Atlantic because it's a major radar and communications hub. Well, after World War III, there will be no more British or French colonies anywhere.
The biggest, most important military, Army, Navy, Air Force target is Pearl Harbor and Honolulu. Is there going to be a possibility that this will be a ramped-up war that could stop? In other words, let's say top 6 U.S. military targets hit: New York, Chicago, L.A., Denver, San Francisco. All right, have you had enough?
Well,
have you had enough?
Here's the thing: is when you go to nuclear war. Like if Russia wanted to drop a nuke on Ukraine, the only condition they could reasonably do that under is if they nuke everybody else at the same exact time. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're playing, when you deal with nuclear war strategy, you can't play games. Listen, we could drop a bomb on Hiroshima and then a few days later a bomb on Nagasaki to pressure the Japanese to do something because nobody else had a nuclear bomb. But now there's thousands of nuclear bombs, 10,000, more than 10,000 of them. And if you're going to shoot one, you have to shoot them all. Okay, you have to completely destroy the enemy.
Okay, well, that was that from the right-wing liberals. What say you, Vessel 2?
Yeah, I think that's the baby boomers at their finest. And I kind of see it was ironic how Frosty, he first off praises 1776 and the creation of the Constitution, and then he goes on later to say that people are stirring up the past.
Yeah, he did say that, right?
And yeah, he's a true bozo. But
yeah, he is a bozo.
Yeah, I mean, this is everything that they've said has been, I guess, the talk of the town on alternative media channels particularly the Jeff Rentz network. He also hosts the David Duke show, and he's heavily involved on trying to point the finger at the small hats. But I mean, all of it is European. So once again, my opinion is they are 10% of the world's population. And as you heard from the horse's mouth, that they're going to destroy all of Western civilization.
90% damage, right? 10% of the population, 90% damage. That's it.
Which leads me to believe that if you're in the Western civilizations, then you need to be moving out if you're not European. And the only safe place to go, I would assume, somewhat safe, is Africa. But you know, if you're not part of the tribe, then how safe are you going to be? So yeah, this is a mess, man. And once again, it's at the hands of the Eurasians.
There you go. That's it. We're gonna take a quick break. I know we're down for time. We can take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna continue to complete this segment and do hear from Dr. X, and then from that point, we're gonna go ahead and place the videos out and articles that corresponds with Yuri and what he was talking about of the evolution of society in America and all over the world, to say the least. Stay tuned. Thank you.